So today, whether you've ever experienced anxiety, depression, eating disorders, or trauma, or maybe somebody that you love has, I think each and every one of us would love to know how to go from that kind of internal struggle into a profound peace and connection with spirit. And my guest today is going to share with us how she did that. Colleen Millen is a somatic psychotherapist. She's practicing in the Bay Area. And she's also a forest yoga guardian, which is a really special honor because she's one of only 13 mentor teachers around the world who've been handpicked by Anna Forrest to carry the lineage of these forest yoga teachings. So, Colleen, I'm really thrilled to have you here with me today. Hello.
Hello, I'm happy to be here with you. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So we were chatting just a moment ago, and let's dive right in. So we're here to talk about your journey with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and trauma, and how you healed from that. So let's actually just start with a snapshot. Can you tell me a little bit about who you were and what your life looked like when you were really struggling with these things?
Well, yes, I can. So back when I met Anna in my 20s, I had been practicing yoga and probably, I would say, dabble in, dabble out. There wasn't a steady practice. And in my 20s, I sort of had a crisis of self and was diagnosed with depression. And right around the same time, I decided to go to a Midwest Yoga Conference, and I decided to take classes from Stephen Cope and Baron Baptiste. So they were asana-wise very challenging classes. And I didn't know this lady, Anna Forrest. I put her at the end of my day. And her class, I kid you not, was called something like Yoga for Restoration. Something like that. And this is back in 1999. And so I envisioned, other yoga community of people can appreciate restorative yoga, laying on the ground, being supported by a lot of props. And that was not the brand of restoration that I was given. I found myself at one point in class, sweat dripping off me in a lunge with hugging my back foot in toward my sit bone, which we call lunge H to the V, heel to the butt. And we did this thing called a lion. And it was the very first time I had met lions in such an intense position. And what happened is I had this incredible, intense rage move from my thigh, move through my body, and come out of my mouth. And I fell out of the pose in my rage. And, the internal chatter was all about projection. Who is the teacher? This is supposed to be restorative yoga. Who does she think she is? Why is she making us do this? All the things I was making her wrong so that I didn't have to look at what my internal process was. And that's the essence of projection, right? And at a certain point, I got it. I got that this was my rage. And what helped me with that was that I didn't know this woman. How could I be so angry at this woman when I've never met her before? I mean, there was a part of me that just sort of like came in, and I call that the voice of my spirit, my wiser self, thankfully. And then after class, I marched up to her, and
very gutsy.
I said to her, this was, what's that?
Very gutsy.
Very gutsy. Well, with her, and always with her in my explorations with Anna, I don't have a problem being gutsy. I think she brings that out in people. So I did march up to her and I said, this was the best yoga experience of my life, and I spent the whole class being pissed at you. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me. And I thought it was kind of equal parts shock and amusement, but again, I could be projecting again. And she said, I'm doing a teacher training in Chicago in the fall. You should come. And that changed my life right there.
Wow.
That's why I met Anna.
You know, it's so interesting to hear your story about rage and lunge heel to butt, because I didn't share this with you before, but that's actually my exact story. The very first forest yoga class I ever went to was in Chicago. And I remember this pose, lunge heel to butt. And same thing, I was so pissed off at the teacher. I was just railing against him in my mind. And I was like, I will never go back. And I didn't actually have that big breakthrough in my first class. It took me a while, but I swore off. Luckily, I didn't know that it was forest yoga, but I swore it off completely. And then I kind of accidentally found myself back in that class, like later that year or something, when I was actually ready for it and was able to move the feelings and own the feelings and do the work. And here I am 12 years later and totally in love with forest yoga. So I really resonate with what you shared.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Our thighs, in particular, are great stores of information. When you think about, when we talk about experiences of trauma and, any emotionality that brings us into our survival system, our legs are what help us run away or run toward a fight. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, when we discuss this, and I don't have any research to back this up, but I think it's quite natural that the legs would have something to say about our emotionality, relating to our ability to feel empowered, to stand our ground, to ground and be in our bodies, to help us fight or run away, help us survive.
Yeah.
We could probably talk about a lot of different relationships that the legs bring us to.
Yes. Yeah. I have certainly felt that, all of that coming through my quads and some of the long standing poses.
Well, and the other level that I want to speak to here, from one somatic psychotherapist to the other, is when I'm working with myself, when I'm working with a yoga client, when I'm working with a therapy client as a clinician. And it may be different things that I'm doing, but if I have a client who's feeling terribly unempowered, one of the actions that I experiment or suggest or invite someone into is experimenting with the ground, with turning on the leg. And there's so many, and you could probably speak to this too, there's so many benefits to turning on the legs, to getting the circulation going to the legs, to feeling a sense of inhabiting your legs.
Yes.
It actually inspires a felt sense of empowerment.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. I use horse stance for that all the time. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So, Colleen, can you tell me more about, so it's a beautiful story that I love the fact that you were in that yoga class and you actually did what is the, forest yoga at its best, really, is to kind of transform that kind of intense internal experience into deep connection with spirit and to feel empowered through that. My guess, though, is that it took more than just that one class for you to actually be really working through, depression, anxiety, eating disorder, trauma. That's a lot of stuff. So can you speak a little bit more to your journey with those particular pieces and how, whether it's yoga or other tools, fit in with how you worked through?
Absolutely. What I want to say is forest yoga has been an absolute cornerstone to my recovery with very intense emotional mental health issues. It has always been with me all the way through. And there's a few things I can point to of why that is. Number one, the focuses of a forest yoga class allow for a deep self experience. We talk about being struggle-free. We talk about feeling your heart, being touched by your practice. These are very felt sense building beings. They put you right into a direct experience. The other aspect of forest yoga that has absolutely made this a cornerstone of my life, and the reason that I'm a guardian, and I've been practicing forest yoga since 1999, is the focus on all our teachers on the breath and the energy. So not just saying breathe, but we have this thing I'm sure you appreciate, the breath formula, that as teachers in this community and leaders in this community, we are asked to teach from a full energetic space so that we can be modeled energetically for our students. That has always been felt by me, and it's something that I've always yearned for, particularly when I was really suffering in depression. So always attracted to the people who could do that, like Anna, who can be embodied, who could be vulnerable, who could have their feelings and let them move. And I think there's a direct connection with the quality and the mindfulness around the breath. Right.
So specifically, it sounds to me like, and I know with a lot of my clients who suffer from depression, the essence of what they're going through is there's a lot that's stuck and unexpressed. So it sounds like your experience as when you were working through depression was to go to a place and be able to breathe fully, feel your body fully, and to have a model at the front of the room of somebody who's really doing that helped you find your way into more aliveness in your body. And that actually, helped heal your depression. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, and I feel very passionate about this other piece too, and I love this word that you use, aliveness. The other aspect of the forest yoga practice is these sequences warm sequentially, intelligently toward building such strength, such connection, evoking such a sensorial experience that you can own as yours.
Yes.
And when you're talking about, at least in my experience of depression, how disassociated I was from sensation, how disassociated I was from the feelings I was depressing, that is such a critical thing to be able to build. Standing in a pose for 5 breaths and feeling even just the shaking, even if it's not connected to anything, but being able to embody that experience, that thrum of aliveness. Those are the kinds of experiences that moved me out of depression, that gave me life fun.
Yes.
On other ways to be in the world.
Yes. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. I actually, it's interesting. I just in February I was with Anna on a retreat, and I actually was infected with Lyme disease while I was there. It's totally challenging thing, and I wasn't diagnosed for about 7 weeks. And I have not ever had major health issues like this, but I swear it's been my practice, through the dizziness and the headaches and the nausea and the fatigue and the spaciness and the breath hunger and all the other symptoms that I've been going through. The experience of being able to show up on my mat and practice forest yoga and find a place of strength to warm up my body, fill me with breath, fill me with aliveness, gets me so in contact with spirit such that it's like I can feel the Lyme leaving through my pores. It's been a phenomenal piece of my healing journey, and my doctors have been so amazed. I don't know how you're healing this fast, and I don't know how you're doing this well, but you're so healthy. And I attribute it totally to forest yoga and healthy diet and caring deeply for myself, but it's a wonderful tool.
Right, and I mean, the word mindfulness is not, exclusive, but forest yoga in so many ways allows people to have a very deep experience of being a human. And cultivate a strength of body, strength of self-connection, so that they can have a full spectrum of feeling emotionally and sensorially.
Yeah.
so that you can have these passionate discussions with another person
Mm-hmm.
and still
Mm-hmm.
solid inside.
Mm-hmm.
You define what doesn't work in your life and what you're passionate about, and make steps. The how is what we talked about before too. I have continually been inspired in finding the how in my experience through Force Yoga. Because there's another aspect of Force Yoga that's so rich too, and we learn it a lot in the teacher training, but those teachers that come out of the teacher training like you and I, we go and we take this rich mining into our teaching. So it filters through even if it's not like a direct, we're doing chakra process for life decisions with our classes and our, in a regular class. It comes through as a communication, this deep commitment to mining our internal space. I had an experience this week. I've had some very interesting psychosomatic movements with my back this last year. And I'm getting a lot of support from my yoga practice. I'm getting a lot of support from my own personal therapy for that. And here I was sitting on my mat, and I had the flare of my sciatica come up. And because of all the groundwork through the years that I've made and done through Force Yoga, I used that as a spot. And I got very curious about the emotionality, the sensation. But most of all, I made every single choice in that practice to move myself out of pain. What an incredible thing. What an incredibly empowering thing to do. Not move away from the pain. Be with the pain and make choices not to smack my head against the pain.
Yes.
Be with the pain. Be associated. Be in my body with it. And near the end of practice, I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I get going, but I just want to say one more thing. At the end of practice, I thank this part of me. Some of what we do too is like really running those positive energies. I thank this area for being such a teacher for me. And I will tell you, I have been pain-free for 2 days. This part of me needed to be seen. This part of me needed to be thanked and appreciated and worked with in that way, that very deep way. So I interrupted you. I could see you want to say something.
Well, it's that thing that we've been talking about, right? Of like the passion and the aliveness just moving through me, that I get so excited listening to you talk about this because, the thing that you're saying is so profound to me, because before I found Forest Yoga, I was practicing, I did Ashtanga for a while, and I had a Vinyasa practice for a couple of years, and and I also have a history of having been an athlete in my life. And so I had really learned to push my body. I had really learned to push myself and like, look at all these really cool postures and look at how, I can do that. I know I can do that, but not really having that deep connection with myself inside to be able to feel what's appropriate for my body today in this moment right now. Even if I can physically do the pose, does that mean that it's really right for me right now? And so I think about that with some of the emotional processes that we're talking about too, whether it's relationship with food or relationship with self. That's like, how connected can we stay to ourselves to be listening at such a deep level in the present moment so that we actually know how to take care of ourselves. And that's the piece, at least for me, I never learned that in a different kind of yoga class. I've learned that through Forest Yoga. And of course, through my own therapy as well and all the healing work that I've done. But, it sounds like a small and simple thing, but it's actually profound to be able to know how to do that, to actually parent ourselves and take care of ourselves in that way.
Well, one of the themes that I'm going to talk about is 2 years. And encourage her teachers and her students alike to do is like, what is the most nourishing thing that you can do in this moment? Right? And we almost the questioning things that she comes to. What can you do?
Yes, what part of this can you do? Yes.
Yeah, what part of this can you do? I mean, these are such beautiful beautiful, empowering question.
Mm-hmm.
And evocative, too, because it can be very triggering. It can bring up those parts that we might call the shadow. And particularly when I first found Four Sugas, I was neck deep in my depression, quite literally.
Uh-huh.
Very overwhelmed in that experience. And just being able at all to say, what can I do today? I actually translated that when I was in my major depression over a decade ago, a little bit more specifically for me. And I said, what is the least I can do today? And in that place where I couldn't get out of my bed, that question helped me move my toes. And then that question helped me take 5 breaths. And then that question got me out of my ass out of bed so that I can take care of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So inspired. You know, it's like I can feel that running through my whole body too, the aliveness and the inspiration of what it is. It's like it's a simple question, but how empowering, because when you're stuck in bed, you need something like that. Something that isn't sort of some esoteric, I mean, this is the other thing about I hear from a lot of people. It's like, well, yoga's going to make me happy, right? I mean, if I go do yoga, like, won't I, you know, it's like, I want to get away from the things that are painful so that I can be happy and fulfilled. Well, yes, except that that kind of happiness and fulfillment lives on the other side of whatever it is that you're avoiding inside. So how do we begin to look at that?
Finding aliveness, though. I mean, for me, at this point in my life, my definition of aliveness is not never having so-called bad feelings. You know, those ones that we maybe spend a lot of years of our life trying to avoid, whether they're diagnosed as depression or not. I think aliveness really is tolerating, embodying, owning a full spectrum of feelings. Yeah. Being able to feel and deal with that.
Yes. Yes. I love that you use the word tolerating. That's what I say all the time too, is like the more you can learn how to tolerate what you feel in a way that promotes your wholeness, you know, being all of you, the more that you learn how to do that, the closer you get to yourself and the more ecstasy and pleasure, actual physical pleasure there is available to you. And you get to do all that on your mat.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I'll give you another, you know, it's all very exciting. I mean, I'll give you another honest story. I have just so many. I was working with her probably 3-4 years ago. She was in town doing an event. I was an assistant, or I came to one of her practices. And we were doing a very difficult pose, a handstand waving lotus. So it's a handstand. You come into a lotus shape if you can even fathom that. And then your butt's on the wall and you're moving your pretzel legs up and down. And it's incredible amount of strength. And we were supporting each other in it. And Anna was supporting me in it. And I started and my arms was buckled. And she had me. This is my teacher I trust 1,000%. She had me, and yet I was buckling, and yet the story of how I'm not strong enough, and I'm not doing the pose right because I have all the scar tissue in my body from being an athlete, because I couldn't get in the full lotus, how I couldn't do it. I mean, that was the essential, I can't do it. And it was just this flash of human experience of being afraid, self-judging, all in one. And I got down, and she knew what I was running, and we have a level of trust and a friendship we've cultivated now, where she trusts I'm going to deal with what came up, right? So I went and I did chest opener on the wall, which was more tolerable, using that word again. And I got my breath going, I got back in my legs, I felt like it was more in my body. And then I came back and I realized that this was about trust. And it wasn't about the trust that I didn't have for my teacher. Well, it was about the essential trust that was broken in the story of my life because of my childhood. And it's all got to vote in a matter of seconds, really. And once I had that realization, I got in my body, I got into a process of healing and breathed. I had that epiphany. And once I owned that, I got right up into it. I was with her the whole time.
Yes.
And she reminded me again, as she always does, how strong I am.
Yes.
And the strength that she's talking about, and yes, this is an intense pose, and it's not a pose for everybody, and not everyone will be able to do that pose. But it's not just the strength of the body that she was talking about. It is the strength of my conviction, my will, the strength of my intelligence, my, there's so many different strengths.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's what you're speaking to essentially, the way I'm hearing it at least, is like the internal fortitude that it takes. And whether it's your willpower or your empowerment inside or being able to feel how you feel in your heart, it's like that's the stuff that you can't do if you're just plowing through trying to do the poses and you're not that connected with yourself. That's what's so amazing to me about this, is that a pose that you actually could not physically do just a moment prior, to get so fully inside yourself and then be able to do it, is like, well, that's the formula. From that place, you can get up out of bed when you've got depression. From that place, you can work with your disordered eating patterns. From that place, when your anxiety wants to speed you up and have you rush and do a bunch of things, you can slow down and take a breath. From these places, a lot more healing becomes possible. It's so inspiring to me. So, Colleen, this is probably a good time to just check in with you, and you've offered so much good teaching and value here, and I just want to check in and see if there's any last bit that you'd like to add for our viewers.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I want to say. Things and concepts that are easy to put into action, using your body, using force yoga. The first one is inhabit your own body and learn how to do that. And do that as much as you can do. So if it's inhabiting your fine mind and your brain is in your body. Start there. Start with where you are connected. Breathe and return to an intent of being very curious about your experience. Your curiosity will allow you to witness whatever it is that's coming up for you. And these two things, inhabit your body, be curious, they're fundamental to force yoga. And they will draw you into what your next inspiration needs to be, the teacher you need to work with, the food that you need to eat, whatever it is to support you in your life, to make the changes you want to make. Those are two key things. And if I could, I'd like to read from a book that I was published in. Yes. And it speaks to a little bit of what we talked about. Please. And this is from the Yoga Diaries, edited by blogger and editor Jeannie Page, and she's a lovely lady.
And will you just show us that book so that we can see that? Great.
That's the book.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And I end my piece in here saying, my mat has unlocked feeling, courage, and presence, especially when bouts of depression would make me want to curl up and disappear from the world. It has been an altar of sorts where I've named the fluctuations of feeling that both form my emotional world and touch my spirit, which is imbued with gold and is as fluid as water.
I feel it.
The yoga mat is a home where my body, mind, and spirit meet. And while all this sounds romantic, please don't misunderstand. On the yoga mat, it's not all roses, butterflies, and chocolate. I've stumbled, I've cried, I've wailed, I've snorted, I've farted. And yes, this happens for all of us at one time or another. I've raged and I've hit on my mat. And it's because I've had the full spectrum of human experience on the mat that I'm able to say that in yoga and with forest yoga, I've built a home for my soul to play.
Beautiful. Wow. Oh, Colleen, thank you so much. I feel like we could just keep going like this. I feel so inspired and really appreciate you being here with me today. Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Good. Thank you so much. So now Colleen and I would like to hear from you. Please head over to sundarablair.com. Leave a comment on this blog. Share with us one thing you've learned from this video that you can put into action today. The process of writing that out is your first inspiring step towards making big changes in your life like Colleen has. So tell us all about it. Did you like this video? If so, head to sundarablair.com, sign up for my free updates so that you're sure not to miss future videos like this. And as always, please share this video with all your friends. Finally, remember that no matter what you're going through inside, the only way out is through. So keep going and you will make it through to the other side. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.